All right, guys, back here on Southeastern 14 with Max Barr. We continue our look at SEC basketball transfers. Listen, we're not going in any specific order here. We are doing these basically as we just get them thrown at us. And
Yeah.
so, Arkansas, congratulations. You get back-to-back days this week. Other people, Kentucky, whoever, Ole Miss, Vandy, there are other teams that are about to get back-to-back days too. But Arkansas happened to be the
We're
team
trying. We're trying.
that gets back-to-back days here this week at Southeastern 14. So all the other fan bases, be patient. We will get to your players at some point in the near future. But we are getting to another Arkansas transfer. We just talked about Jonas Adu. Now we get to another one in Johnell Davis, of course, Nelly Davis, as most people refer to him as, coming over from FAU. It's been FAU day here
Yep.
at Southeastern 14. We did Elijah Martin to Florida, a little behind on that one. But let's talk about Nelly Davis going to Arkansas. Before we do, let's tell you about our friends at Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports this season. MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest stats, news, and scores available. Follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head on over to their website today or use your mobile device to get on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, Max. So, two guys that are responsible for a team going to the national, Final Four, get an opportunity to get on the national stage there a couple seasons ago in the NCAA tournament. They want to play in the SEC.
Oh, yeah.
Said Elijah Martin goes over to Florida. Now we get Davis joining John Calipari and the Razorbacks. Initial thoughts on someone who, hey, we told Cal, we said, you got to go get some experience this offseason. We don't know where he's going to be coaching, but we said, you got to get some experience. Well, hey, this counts.
Look at that smile, Blake. Look at that cheek-to-cheek smile. You think
He's
Nelly
pointing
Davis
right
is
at us.
having a... Wait, say that again?
He's pointing right at us.
He's saying, I know who's about to do a recap video on me, and I just want to let you know how excited I am to be in Fayetteville. Hey, picking up what you're putting down, Nelly. Right on cue. Let's dive into him a little bit here. So he's a senior, but fifth year. Had a redshirt year. So turning 23 actually in a few weeks. Happy birthday, Nelly. May 23rd. Let's go down some of these accolades, Blake. This is how I always like to start. Well, you could just mute yourself, and I'll get back to you in an hour. That's how many accolades Nelly Davis has. First team in the American, first team in Conference USA last year. FAU made that jump to the American. First teamer both years. Preseason player of the year last year in the AAC. You name it, he's got it. But some of these other accolades, some of these other things jumped out at me, and I want to start with them. Okay, so listen to this. That not this past year, but the Final Four year when they were still in Conference USA. That was a sophomore year. 509 points that year. That's in the FAU record books, most point by a sophomore in FAU history. But this is where it gets even crazier, okay? That second round game against FDU, Farley Dickinson, Johnell Davis became the first player to score 25 points, grab 10 boards, dish out 5 assists, and tally 5 steals in an NCAA tournament game since steals became a stat and back in '86. Only player ever. That just to start with that's who we're dealing with here, Blake.
Yeah, I'm just gonna let you keep talking for an hour. Yeah, like you said, he is a guy that you just look at kind of the numbers, and just a model of consistency. Really, the past 2 seasons, you want to know why FAU was able to make a run there like they did in the tournament 2 seasons ago. But really, just look at his numbers. This guy he brings it every single game. And I think that is really what stands out. You also kind of compare his numbers from year to year. I think obviously the minutes go up by 6 minutes per game from the Final Four season to this past season. Started every single game. This past year played 32 minutes a game. 3-point percentage goes up almost 6% this past year too. So shooting 41.4% this past year, 58 of 140, 145 of 136 the year before, shot 35.7%. So not a huge difference. All of his other numbers, though, like you look, his assist numbers went up considerably. Goes from 61 year before to 100 this past season. Of course, that's based on team dynamic too and the role you play. But Like rebounding numbers, very consistent year to year. I'm just like, I'm looking at these and I'm just thinking, man, like his offensive rebounding numbers, very similar. Defensive rebounding numbers, very similar. Like blocks, steals, like this guy is just pretty much the past 2 seasons. He's just kind of giving you the same thing. And I think, like we said, when we talked about all these guys that Arkansas is bringing in, we've talked about some of the younger guys that are going to be on this roster, like a Boogie Flan, like a Big Z,
Yep.
underclassmen. But we also talked about what an Adu brings as someone with kind of the experience in the SEC. But now you're talking about a guy in Davis who has experience getting to a Final Four, playing for a nationally relevant team the past 2 seasons, and yeah, like that's what Cal needs on this roster.
Yeah, the offensive numbers incredible. I think if you just take a simple dive into him, you'll see how he fills the stat sheet up. But what doesn't get put on that stat sheet is how good he is defensively. Also, you can look at the steal numbers. He's averaged at least a steal a game over the past 3 years. If you look at the Ken Pom steal rate, he's been ranked nationally in steal rate for the past 3 years. So he has those defensive numbers, but also Dusty May has played small ball for a few years at FAU. That was kind of how they, jumped on the scene 2 years ago, was with that incredible offense, really playing small ball. Well, Davis was that 6'4" guy that was tasked with being that small ball four almost. Now he's capable of playing, I would say, pretty much 1 through 4. But you don't see that high defensive rebounding rate, those high rebounding numbers out of a 6'4" guard that often. And go through any of FAU's games. Who's guarding that big physical 3 on the wing or the slashing stretch 4 that is a matchup nightmare? It's Nelly Davis. He's the guy guarding them. And then he's also putting up all those offensive numbers. I know we tend to be a little bit more on the optimistic side here, Blake.
You don't say.
But if I'm putting in a ballot here for preseason SEC teams, I'm not leaving Nelly Davis off that.
All right. I mean, again, it's not. Trust me, we've heard some of the response to some of these videos, and it's like, man, you guys think everyone's the best. Yes, we do. Like, they're coming into the SEC. It just means more here. All right. No, but that's like we said, with all these videos, we're trying to tell you why you should be optimistic with these guys. And some of these guys,
what they can bring.
Some of these guys we don't have to try too hard. And here's a guy we don't have to really try too hard to sell you on, because he is someone that the accolades speak for themselves in averaging the amount of points he did, and just you keep going down the line. Like, here's my question for you. I mean, I guess the one thing I look at, and this is me looking at it and saying, all right, this guy played 32 minutes a game, though. What does he not do well? I mean, he had 2.9 turnovers per game last year. Is that the only thing maybe people could pick on him on? But even in that, I'm like, can you really pick on him for that? I mean, you're talking about a guy who's, obviously has the ball in his hands a lot, and teams are game planning to try to stop him. So if he turns it over a little bit, he's playing 32 minutes. Other than that, I mean, realistically, that's the point. Like, if you look at everything else that he does, what is there not to be excited about when you bring someone like this to the mix with, again, everything he's accomplished the past 2 seasons, even beyond that? I mean, again, it wasn't like he was a slouch. Before that, played 19 minutes per game in 22 and averaged about 7 points. But all of his numbers have continued to go in the right direction. Like I said, other than the turnover numbers, but to me, that's more of a, hey, we now know what we have to guard with this team that just got to the Final Four out of nowhere, and we're putting all of our attention on him. And yet he still put up ridiculous numbers last year despite that, and still shot 48% from the floor. And so, yeah, like I would be thrilled if I'm an Arkansas fan getting this guy to join the group we've already talked about. You think about kind of how these guys are going to play off each other. That's what I think is pretty exciting.
Well, okay. First off, to answer the first question, I don't really think there's much you can get him on. I genuinely believe, and I have not said this for all the transfer videos we've been doing, and we've been optimistic, but I genuinely believe Nelly Davis can be one of the best players in the league next year. And I think he gets even overlooked a little bit. He's a career 37% three-point shooter. He's not looked at or not talked about as an elite shooter, knockdown shooter. Oh, you got a sniper. That doesn't really get categorized with Johnell Davis. But you look at his numbers in conference play the last 2 years. In Conference USA 2 years ago, he was the 9th best shooter by percentage, 40.8%. in conference play. And then just last year in the American, 44% has him as the third highest by percentage. He's been a top 10 shooter in his conference past 2 years on top of everything else. Come on.
37% in the SEC. We'll definitely take that. Although the SEC, as we said, got better this year as a league shooting-wise. They shot about 33.5% as a whole in conference games. It's 24th nationally, which usually the SEC has been like bottom 4 or 5 over the past several years. So it actually took a step forward. There are certain players you can thank for that. But, yeah, like I think he's someone that'll be able to knock down open shots. And remember, too, he's coming from FAU where they were getting up and down the floor. There was transition opportunities. We know kind of last year with Kentucky, you saw how they played. Much different, as we said, for Cal to really change his philosophy offensively. And that's what people have wanted. And I think you're going to see that same thing carry over. We talked about why that could happen with Boogie Flan leading the way, as one of the primary guards. And then, having a big man like Adu running up and down the floor and different guys like that. We'll get to the other players on the Arkansas roster, a couple of the other freshmen in Knox and Richmond too. But, I think, like you said, this to me is – when you consider what Davis has accomplished, he will likely go into the season as one of the more accomplished SEC players to this point. And it's really just a matter of seeing how he fits into this completely new roster at Arkansas. And that's always the fascinating thing with Cal. And it won't be any different this year just based on the fact that he is going to have an entirely new group with him, except for, a couple guys that move over from Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, besides Big Z, we're looking at a new batch of guys here. Yeah, I think he'll slot in probably maybe the 2, the 3. I don't know. I mean, you can.
Depends on who else they get, right?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends, but that's also to wrap up. Like that's one thing that makes Johnell Davis so valuable when building a roster here, kind of in the coaching change portal. You got to make a roster real quick. You can get a guy in Johnell Davis, and he's not stuck into one position. He can kind of play wherever you want him to, wherever you need him to. That's another thing to keep in mind.
Yep, and of course we'll have it all covered here at Southeastern 14 as we continue talking about all of these guys on these rosters. Like I said, Arkansas, you've been the flavor of the week. Kentucky, you're about to get to that. We got a couple Kentucky ones we got to do. So
yep.
We've got a lot more. Ole Miss, Vandy, South Carolina, maybe Alabama. We got a lot more on the way here soon. So be sure to hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button on your way out. We appreciate you guys watching as always. Check out all our baseball and football content as well. And thanks as always for watching. Talk to you again here soon at Southeastern 14.